The sky above Earth was unusually dark that evening, dotted with stars that seemed to twinkle a little brighter than usual. People around the world went about their lives, unaware of the monumental event about to unfold. In orbit, far above the blue-green planet, something strange began to happen. A faint shimmer appeared in the void of space, growing larger and more intense with each passing second. Then, without warning, thousands of massive ships materialized, their metallic hulls glinting ominously in the sunlight. The sight sent shockwaves across the globe. News outlets scrambled to cover the event, broadcasting live footage of the alien fleet looming over Earth's atmosphere. Governments convened emergency meetings, and military forces were put on high alert. Among those watching the chaos unfold was Jacob Hayes, an astrophysicist working at NASA. He stood in his lab, staring at the monitors displaying images of the colossal vessels. His mind raced as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. This wasn't just any unidentified object. It was an entire armada. Jacob wasn't the only one feeling uneasy. Thousands of miles away, in a sleek office building in New York City, Rachel Adams sat at her desk, sipping coffee while scrolling through reports. As a skilled diplomat known for her ability to navigate tense situations, she had been called into action after the fleet's sudden appearance. Her phone buzzed incessantly, each call bringing updates from panicked officials. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. Whatever these aliens wanted, it couldn't be good. Hours passed before the invaders made contact. A holographic transmission flickered to life on screens worldwide, revealing a figure clad in ornate armor. The man introduced himself as Emperor Calvorn of the Galactic Empire. His voice boomed with authority, dripping with arrogance. "People of Earth," he began, "we have come seeking resources essential to our survival. You will provide us with what we require. Refusal is not an option." The message sent waves of fear and anger rippling through humanity. Who did these aliens think they were? How dare they demand anything from Earth? Jacob watched the broadcast with growing frustration. He knew enough about interstellar civilizations to understand that empires like this often operated with little regard for smaller species. But this was Earth, his home, and he refused to believe they would simply roll over and submit. Rachel felt the same way. She hurried to a secure facility where leaders from various nations had gathered to discuss their response. The room buzzed with heated arguments, some advocating for surrender to avoid bloodshed, others calling for resistance. Rachel listened carefully, weighing every word. When it was her turn to speak, she stepped forward, her tone calm yet firm. "We can't give in to their demands," she said. "If we do, they'll see us as weak. They'll take everything until there's nothing left." Her words struck a chord, and slowly, the group began to agree on a plan. Instead of bowing to the Empire's demands, they decided to issue a bold statement. Earth would ban the Galactic Empire outright. It was a risky move, but it sent a clear message. They weren't afraid to stand up for themselves. As the declaration was broadcast to the Empire, Jacob returned to his lab, determined to find answers. He dug through old records, searching for clues about similar encounters in Earth's history. What he found chilled him to the bone. There were whispers of other civilizations that had crossed paths with the Empire, and none of them had survived unscathed. Back in New York, Rachel stared out her window at the alien ships dominating the horizon. She clenched her fists, resolve hardening within her. Humanity might be outmatched, but they weren't powerless. And if the Empire thought Earth would roll over without a fight, they were dead wrong. Jacob Hayes spent the night hunched over his desk, surrounded by stacks of dusty files and glowing computer screens. The weight of what he had uncovered pressed heavily on his shoulders. Buried deep within NASA's archives were fragments of information, old transmissions, blurry images, and cryptic notes that hinted at previous encounters between humanity and extraterrestrial civilizations. None of it was conclusive, but one thing became painfully clear. Wherever the Galactic Empire went, devastation followed. He found records of a distant planet called Silo 7, once thriving with life according to intercepted signals from decades ago. The Empire had arrived there under similar pretenses, demanding resources, and left behind only silence. Another file mentioned a species known as the Valens, who had resisted the Empire's advances. Their homeworld was now a barren wasteland, stripped of everything valuable. Jacob stared at the data, his stomach churning. If Earth didn't act quickly, it could suffer the same fate. Determined to share his findings, Jacob reached out to Rachel Adams early the next morning. She was already swamped with meetings, but when he explained what he'd discovered, she insisted they speak in person. They met in a quiet corner of a secure government building, away from prying eyes. Jacob spread out his research on a table, pointing out key details. "This isn't just about resources," he said urgently. "They don't negotiate. They conquer. And if we show any weakness, they'll crush us." Rachel nodded, her expression grim. She had suspected as much, but seeing the evidence made it undeniable. "We need to convince the others," she said. "If we can get everyone on the same page, we might have a chance." Jacob agreed, though he knew it wouldn't be easy. Humanity wasn't exactly known for its unity, especially in times of crisis. Still, Rachel had a knack for persuasion, and she wasted no time putting it to use. Over the next few days, Rachel worked tirelessly to rally global leaders. She presented Jacob's findings during high-level strategy sessions, emphasizing the stakes. At first, skepticism reigned. Some officials argued that resistance was futile, while others believed surrendering would spare Earth from destruction. But Rachel refused to back down. "If we give them an inch, they'll take a mile," she told the room, her voice steady but firm. "Look at the facts. Every planet they've touched has been ruined. Do you really think they'll stop after getting what they want?" Her arguments began to sink in, especially after Jacob provided visual aids, maps showing the Empire's expansion across the galaxy, timelines of conquered worlds, and even simulations predicting how quickly Earth's resources would vanish under their control. Slowly but surely, the tide turned. Even the most hesitant leaders started to see the truth. Diplomacy alone wouldn't save them. Meanwhile, outside the closed doors of these meetings, ordinary people were beginning to take notice. News outlets picked up snippets of leaked information, fueling public outrage. Protests erupted in major cities, with crowds chanting slogans like "Not Our Planet" and "Stand Strong." Social media buzzed with hashtags calling for unity against the invaders. For the first time in years, humanity felt connected, not divided by borders or ideologies, but united by a common enemy. Back in his lab, Jacob continued digging deeper into the Empire's technology. He studied footage of their ships, analyzing their designs and movements. There had to be a way to fight back, some vulnerability they could exploit. While Rachel handled the political side of things, he focused on finding practical solutions. Together, they formed an unlikely partnership, each playing to their strengths. As the days passed, Earth's response took shape. Governments pooled resources, scientists collaborated on defense strategies, and militaries prepared for potential conflict. It was far from perfect. Tensions still simmered, and not everyone agreed on the best course of action. But progress was being made. Rachel often found herself marveling at how quickly humanity had mobilized. Despite the fear and uncertainty, there was a sense of purpose in the air. Late one evening, as Rachel reviewed plans for the upcoming announcement banning the Empire, she paused to glance out the window. The alien fleet still hovered menacingly above Earth, a constant reminder of the threat they faced. But instead of feeling overwhelmed, she felt something else, a spark of hope. Humanity had been pushed to the brink before and emerged stronger. This time would be no different. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The tension on Earth was palpable as the deadline approached. Emperor Calvorn's ultimatum loomed over humanity like a storm cloud, casting a shadow of fear and uncertainty across the planet. The Empire had given Earth 48 hours to comply with their demands, or face the consequences. For many, those 2 days felt more like an eternity. People huddled around televisions and radios, waiting anxiously for news. Soldiers manned defense stations, their faces etched with determination, but also dread. And in the halls of power, leaders worked tirelessly to prepare for whatever came next. Rachel Adams stood at the center of it all, her voice echoing through conference rooms as she addressed global representatives. "We've shown them we're not afraid," she said firmly, her hands gripping the edge of the table. "But now we need to prove it." She outlined the plan they had crafted together. Instead of bowing to the Empire's demands, Earth would issue a formal declaration banning them outright. It was a bold move, one that carried enormous risks, but Rachel believed it was necessary. If humanity showed even a hint of weakness, the Empire would exploit it without hesitation. The announcement was broadcast live to the entire world and directly to the alien fleet hovering above Earth. Rachel delivered the message herself, standing tall before cameras as millions watched. Her tone was calm but resolute. "To the Galactic Empire," she began, "you are not welcome here. We will not surrender our resources or our freedom. Leave our planet immediately, or you will face the consequences." The room fell silent after she finished speaking. Some leaders exchanged nervous glances, while others nodded approvingly. Outside, crowds erupted into cheers, waving flags and banners emblazoned with slogans of defiance. But amidst the celebration, there was an undercurrent of unease. No one knew how the Empire would respond, and everyone feared the worst. Jacob Hayes watched the broadcast from his lab, his heart pounding. He admired Rachel's courage, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The Empire wasn't used to being challenged, especially by a species as seemingly insignificant as humans. What would they do when faced with outright rejection? Would they retaliate immediately or bide their time before striking? Jacob didn't have answers, but he knew one thing for certain: humanity needed to be ready. He threw himself into his work, analyzing every scrap of data he could find about the Empire's technology. Using satellite imagery and intercepted communications, he studied their ships' movements and energy signatures. There had to be a weakness, something they could use against the invaders if it came to a fight. Late into the night, Jacob pored over schematics and equations, his mind racing. He barely noticed the exhaustion creeping up on him until a colleague gently urged him to take a break. Meanwhile, public sentiment continued to shift. The initial wave of fear gave way to a fierce determination to protect Earth at all costs. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers, eager to join the military or assist in any way they could. Factories ramped up production of weapons and supplies, while engineers worked around the clock to fortify cities and develop new defense systems. Even children pitched in, collecting materials and spreading messages of hope. Humanity had never been so united or so desperate. As the hours ticked down, the atmosphere grew heavier. News anchors provided constant updates, speculating about the Empire's next move. Some experts predicted an immediate attack, while others thought the aliens might try diplomacy again. Rachel monitored the situation closely, coordinating with military commanders and government officials to ensure everyone was prepared. She tried to stay optimistic, reminding herself of humanity's resilience, but doubt lingered in the back of her mind. Then, just minutes before the deadline expired, something happened. The alien fleet shifted slightly in orbit, their massive ships realigning in a way that sent shivers down Jacob's spine. Sensors picked up increased energy readings, suggesting they were powering up their weapons. Rachel received urgent reports confirming the same thing. Her stomach tightened as she realized what it meant. The Empire wasn't going to leave quietly. Standing in the command center, surrounded by blinking monitors and tense faces, Rachel took a deep breath. Whatever came next, humanity would face it head-on. They had made their choice, to stand firm, no matter the cost. As the final seconds counted down, she whispered to herself, "This is it. Let's show them what we're made of." The moment the deadline passed, the Empire's response was swift and merciless. A low hum filled the air as their ships began to glow with an eerie light. Then, without warning, beams of energy shot down from the sky. striking military bases, communication towers, and power grids across the globe. Explosions erupted in flashes of orange and red, sending plumes of smoke billowing into the air. The attack was precise, targeting key infrastructure to cripple Earth's ability to fight back. Rachel Adams watched the chaos unfold from a secure bunker deep underground. Screens displayed live footage of burning cities and fleeing civilians. Her hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the table, but her voice remained steady. "We knew this was coming," she said to the room of generals and advisors. "Now it's time to show them we won't go down without a fight." Orders were issued rapidly, mobilizing troops and activating emergency protocols. Humanity's counterattack had begun. Jacob Hayes was miles away in his lab, frantically working to analyze the alien weapons. He studied recordings of the attacks, focusing on the frequency and intensity of the energy beams. If he could understand how they worked, maybe he could find a way to neutralize them. His team buzzed around him, running simulations and testing theories. Time was running out, but Jacob refused to give up. "There has to be a flaw," he muttered under his breath. "Everything has a flaw." Above ground, humanity fought back with everything it had. Fighter jets soared into the sky, engaging the alien ships in dogfights. Missiles streaked through the clouds, exploding against the invaders' shields. Though most of the attacks were deflected, a few managed to breach the defenses, causing minor damage to the fleet. On the ground, soldiers set up anti-aircraft cannons and deployed drones armed with experimental technology. Civilians joined the effort too, using whatever tools they could find to sabotage imperial forces landing near their homes. One such battle took place in a small coastal town where Sergeant Liam Carter led a group of volunteers. Armed with rifles and makeshift explosives, they ambushed a squad of alien scouts sent to secure supplies. The invaders were tall and heavily armored, moving with unnatural speed, but they underestimated the determination of the townspeople. Using guerrilla tactics, Liam and his team lured the aliens into narrow streets, picking them off one by one. By the time reinforcements arrived, only one scout remained alive, a prisoner who would prove invaluable. Back at the bunker, Rachel coordinated the global resistance effort, ensuring resources were distributed where they were needed most. She reached out to former adversaries, appealing to their shared interest in survival. To her surprise, nations that had once been hostile to each other agreed to cooperate. North Korea provided missile technology, while Iran shared intelligence on potential weak points in the empire's strategy. Even private companies contributed, donating advanced equipment and funding research initiatives. As the days turned into weeks, humanity's resilience began to shine through. Cities rebuilt their defenses, fortifying themselves against future assaults. Factories churned out new weapons designed specifically to combat the alien threat. Scientists collaborated across borders, sharing discoveries that brought them closer to understanding the Empire's technology. Jacob finally made a breakthrough. The energy shields protecting the alien ships operated on a specific frequency. If they could disrupt that frequency with targeted electromagnetic pulses, they might be able to disable the shields temporarily. The news spread quickly, reigniting hope among the weary defenders. Plans were drawn up for a large-scale operation to test the theory. Meanwhile, Rachel worked tirelessly to keep morale high, delivering speeches that reminded people why they were fighting. For their families, their freedom, and the future of their species. She visited hospitals, shelters, and frontline physicians, offering words of encouragement to those struggling to hold on. Despite the destruction and loss, something remarkable emerged from the ashes: unity. For the first time in history, humanity stood together as one. Soldiers from different countries fought side by side. Scientists pooled their knowledge, and ordinary citizens sacrificed comfort and safety to support the war effort. It wasn't perfect. There were still disagreements and setbacks. But the spirit of cooperation gave them strength. Late one night, as Rachel sat alone in her quarters, she allowed herself a moment of reflection. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but she felt a flicker of optimism. Humanity had faced countless challenges throughout its history, and always found a way to endure. This time would be no different. The captured alien scout became the key to humanity's next move. Held in a high-security facility, the prisoner was subjected to intense interrogation. Scientists and military personnel worked around the clock, trying to extract every piece of information they could. Jacob Hayes led the effort, his mind racing with possibilities. The scout, though injured and defiant, eventually revealed critical details about the Empire's technology and tactics. Through careful analysis of the scout's equipment, Jacob discovered something groundbreaking. The Empire's energy shields operated on a predictable cycle. For a brief moment every few minutes, the shields dropped their strength slightly to recharge. This vulnerability was small but significant. If exploited correctly, it could give Earth's forces an opening to strike. Jacob immediately shared the findings with Rachel Adams, who wasted no time incorporating the discovery into their battle plans. Meanwhile, the Empire continued its relentless assault. Cities burned, and millions were displaced, but humanity refused to back down. Resistance fighters launched daring raids on Imperial supply lines, disrupting their operations and slowing their advance. In one particularly bold operation, a team led by Sergeant Liam Carter infiltrated an alien outpost hidden in the mountains of Alaska. Using stolen technology and sheer determination, they destroyed the base, dealing a major blow to the invaders' logistics network. As the resistance gained momentum, Rachel focused on rallying global support. She traveled to various nations, meeting with leaders and ordinary citizens alike. Her speeches emphasized unity and resilience, reminding everyone that Earth's survival depended on working together. "We're stronger than they think," she told a crowd of volunteers gathered in a makeshift shelter. "They underestimated us once. Let's make sure they never do it again." Back at the lab, Jacob and his team worked tirelessly to develop weapons capable of exploiting the shield vulnerability. They modified existing missiles to emit electromagnetic pulses timed to coincide with the shield's recharge cycle. The first test runs showed promise, destroying several smaller alien ships during skirmishes. Encouraged by the results, military commanders prepared for a larger-scale attack, targeting one of the Empire's command vessels orbiting Earth. The plan was risky. Humanity's forces were outnumbered and outgunned, but Rachel insisted they had no choice. "If we don't hit them hard now, they'll keep pushing until there's nothing left," she argued during a strategy meeting. After heated debate, the decision was made to proceed. Captain Daniel Brooks, a seasoned pilot known for his calm under pressure, was chosen to lead the assault. His squadron, composed of Earth's best pilots, trained tirelessly for the mission ahead. On the day of the attack, tension hung thick in the air. Pilots suited up in silence, checking their gear one last time before boarding their ships. Jacob watched from mission control, his heart pounding as he monitored the data feeds. Rachel stood beside him, her expression unreadable, but her eyes filled with quiet resolve. "This is it," she said softly. "Let's hope we're right." The fleet launched into space, moving swiftly toward the target. As they approached, the alien ship loomed large, its surface bristling with weapons. The pilots held their breath, waiting for the signal. When the moment came, Captain Brooks gave the order. Missiles streaked forward, timed perfectly to strike as the shields flickered. For a split second, it seemed like nothing would happen, but then explosions lit up the darkness, tearing through the hull of the massive vessel. Cheers erupted in mission control as the damaged ship began to drift, smoke pouring from its wounds. It wasn't a total victory. The rest of the fleet remained intact, but it was proof that humanity could fight back. Rachel allowed herself a small smile, knowing this was just the beginning. The Empire might have thought Earth was weak, but they were wrong. And now, they were starting to realize it. As the pilots returned to base, exhausted but triumphant, Jacob turned to Rachel. "This changes everything," he said. "If we can keep finding weaknesses, we can win this." Rachel nodded, her gaze fixed on the screen showing the crippled alien ship. "Winning won't be easy," she replied. But we've shown them we're not afraid. That's a start. The success of the attack on the alien command vessel sent shockwaves through the Empire's ranks and gave humanity a much-needed boost. For the first time since the invasion began, there was a glimmer of hope. News of the victory spread quickly, lighting up social media and news outlets around the world. People celebrated in the streets, waving flags and chanting slogans of defiance. The message was clear: Earth wasn't going to roll over and die. Rachel Adams stood in the middle of the chaos, watching videos of cheering crowds on her phone. She felt a surge of pride, but knew better than to let it cloud her judgment. One victory didn't mean the war was over, not by a long shot. The Empire still had thousands of ships in orbit, and their forces on the ground were far from defeated. But the attack proved that humanity could strike back effectively if they worked together. That knowledge gave Rachel the confidence to push forward with her next plan. Jacob Hayes, meanwhile, was already back in his lab, analyzing data from the battle. He pored over recordings of the damaged alien ship, studying every detail. His team had managed to recover fragments of its wreckage during the raid, and now they were dissecting the pieces for clues. What they found was both fascinating and alarming. The Empire's technology was incredibly advanced, but it relied heavily on centralized systems. If those systems could be disrupted or destroyed, it might cripple their entire operation. "We need to hit them where it hurts," Jacob said during a meeting with Rachel and military leaders. "Their ships are connected to a central network. Take out the hub, and you take out the fleet." The idea was ambitious, but it made sense. The challenge was finding the hub and getting close enough to destroy it. After hours of discussion, they decided to use the captured scout as bait. By feeding false information to the prisoner, they hoped to lure the Empire into revealing the location of their main control center. While Jacob and his team worked on the technical side, Rachel focused on rallying international support. She reached out to neighboring star systems, broadcasting the Empire's crimes across the galaxy. Using hacked communication channels, she shared evidence of the devastation left in the Empire's wake. Images of ruined planets, testimonies from survivors, and intercepted transmissions detailing their brutal tactics. Her goal was simple: turn the galaxy against the Empire and gain allies who could help Earth fight back. Her efforts paid off sooner than expected. A coalition known as the Free Systems Alliance responded to her broadcast, offering assistance. The alliance, composed of planets that had broken away from the Empire centuries ago, saw Earth's struggle as an opportunity to weaken their former oppressors. They sent reinforcements, a fleet of sleek, agile ships equipped with cutting-edge weaponry, as well as Commander Ava Chen, a veteran pilot with years of experience fighting the Empire. Commander Chen arrived at Earth's defense headquarters with a no-nonsense attitude and a sharp mind. She quickly took charge of joint operations, coordinating strategies between human and rebel forces. Her presence brought a new level of expertise to the table, and her pilots proved invaluable in subsequent battles. Together, they launched a series of coordinated strikes, targeting key imperial installations and supply routes. As the days passed, humanity's resistance grew stronger. Cities fortified themselves, building underground shelters and setting traps for invading forces. Factories churned out weapons and supplies at an unprecedented rate, while scientists continued to innovate, developing new technologies to counter the Empire's advances. Even ordinary citizens played a role, volunteering in relief efforts and spreading messages of hope. Despite the progress, the cost of the war weighed heavily on everyone. Millions had lost their homes, and countless lives had been claimed by the conflict. Rachel often found herself lying awake at night, thinking about the sacrifices people were making. But whenever doubt crept in, she reminded herself why they were fighting: for freedom, for survival, and for the future of their species. One evening, as she walked through a makeshift refugee camp, Rachel stopped to speak with a young girl clutching a tattered stuffed animal. The girl looked up at her with wide eyes and asked, "Are we going to win?" Rachel knelt down, placing a hand on the girl's shoulder. "Yes," she said firmly. We're going to win because we have something they don't: each other. Back at Mission Control, Jacob stared at a map of the Empire's fleet, his mind racing with possibilities. They were closer than ever to finding the central hub, and once they did, everything would change. Humanity had proven it could stand up to the Empire. Now, it was time to show them what they were truly capable of. The Empire struck back with brutal force, determined to crush humanity's growing resistance. Waves of alien ships descended from orbit, bombarding Earth's cities with relentless precision. Skyscrapers crumbled into rubble, and streets were engulfed in flames. The air was thick with smoke and the cries of those fleeing for their lives. Despite the devastation, humanity refused to surrender. Soldiers fought fiercely on the ground, while pilots clashed with alien fighters in the skies above. Captain Daniel Brooks led a squadron of human and rebel ships in a desperate bid to hold off the invaders. His voice crackled over the comms as he barked orders to his team. "Stay sharp. Watch for their patterns." The alien ships moved with unnatural speed, weaving through the chaos like predators hunting prey. But Daniel's pilots had learned from previous battles. They worked together, using hit-and-run tactics to wear down the enemy. Explosions lit up the sky as missiles found their marks, sending alien fighters spiraling out of control. On the ground, Sergeant Liam Carter coordinated guerrilla attacks against Imperial forces. Alongside his team of volunteers, he targeted supply convoys and communication hubs, disrupting the Empire's operations. Their weapons might have been primitive compared to the aliens, but their knowledge of the terrain gave them an edge. Hiding in abandoned buildings and dense forests, they struck quickly and vanished before the enemy could retaliate. Each successful ambush boosted morale, proving that even a small group of determined fighters could make a difference. Despite the Resistance's efforts, the Empire's sheer numbers made it difficult to gain the upper hand. Jacob Hayes knew they needed more than courage. They needed a breakthrough. In his lab, he worked tirelessly to refine the electromagnetic pulse technology that had crippled the alien shields during earlier battles. He collaborated closely with Commander Ava Chen, who provided insights into the Empire's weak points based on her years of experience fighting them. Together, they developed a plan to deploy EMP devices on a larger scale, targeting entire sections of the fleet at once. Rachel Adams played a crucial role in keeping the coalition united. She traveled between bases and command centers, ensuring everyone stayed focused on the mission. Her speeches inspired soldiers and civilians alike, reminding them why they were fighting. "We're not just defending our homes," she told a group of weary volunteers. "We're showing the galaxy that we won't be bullied, that we won't give up." As the battle raged on, Jacob and his team identified what they believed to be the Empire's central control hub, a massive ship hidden deep within the fleet. It was heavily guarded, but if they could destroy it, they might disable the entire armada. Rachel approved the plan immediately, knowing the risks but understanding the potential reward. A team of elite operatives, including Jacob and Sergeant Carter, prepared to infiltrate the hub under the cover of darkness. The mission was perilous. Armed with EMP charges and experimental weapons, the team boarded a stealth shuttle and launched toward the alien fleet. As they approached, tension filled the cramped cabin. Jacob clenched his fists, trying to steady his breathing. This was it, the moment everything hinged on. If they succeeded, humanity would have a real chance. If they failed, the consequences would be catastrophic. Commander Chen led the diversionary assault, drawing the Empire's attention away from the infiltration team. Her pilots flew daring maneuvers, luring alien ships into dogfights far from the central hub. Back on Earth, Captain Brooks coordinated the defense of key locations, buying time for the mission to succeed. Inside the alien ship, Jacob and his team moved silently, avoiding patrols of armored guards. They planted the EMP charges in strategic locations, setting timers to detonate simultaneously. Just as they finished, alarms blared throughout the vessel. The team sprinted for the exit, hearts pounding as they narrowly escaped before the charges exploded. The resulting blast rippled through the fleet, disabling dozens of ships and throwing the Empire into disarray. For the first time, humanity saw a glimmer of victory on the horizon. But the war was far from over. The Empire still had resources and reserves, and its leaders wouldn't give up easily. Yet, as Rachel watched footage of the damaged fleet retreating temporarily, she allowed herself a small smile. Humanity had taken a stand, and the Empire was finally beginning to falter. The explosion that rocked the Empire's central control hub was a turning point. Dozens of alien ships went dark, their systems crippled by the electromagnetic pulse. For a brief moment, the skies above Earth seemed quieter, as if the universe itself had paused to take a breath. But the victory came at a cost. The infiltration team barely escaped with their lives, and many on the ground were still reeling from the relentless attacks. Back at Mission Control, Rachel Adams watched the monitors closely, her eyes scanning the chaos unfolding in space. The damaged fleet began retreating toward the outer edges of Earth's orbit, regrouping under the shadow of larger, undamaged ships. It wasn't a full withdrawal, more like a tactical retreat, but it gave humanity a chance to regroup and plan their next move. "We hit them hard," Rachel said to Jacob Hayes, who stood beside her, his face pale with exhaustion. "But they're not done yet." Jacob nodded, his mind already racing ahead. The EMP attack had proven effective, but it wouldn't be enough to finish the job. The Empire still had thousands of ships, and their leaders were no doubt planning a counterattack. He turned his attention back to the data streaming in from satellites and reconnaissance drones. There had to be another weakness, something they could exploit before the Empire recovered. "If we can disrupt their supply lines again," he muttered, "we might buy ourselves more time." Commander Ava Chen stepped into the room, her expression grim but focused. She had just returned from leading the diversionary assault, her ship battered but intact. "Their morale is shaken," she reported. "They didn't expect us to hit the hub so hard. But don't think for a second they'll let this slide. They'll come back stronger and faster." Her words sent a chill through the room, but they also reinforced the urgency of the situation. Rachel knew they needed reinforcements, and fast. She reached out to the Free Systems Alliance once again, appealing for additional support. To her relief, the Alliance agreed to send more ships and supplies, along with experienced pilots and engineers. Among them was Lieutenant Elena Morales, a skilled tactician who quickly became an invaluable asset in coordinating joint operations. Together, the coalition worked to fortify Earth's defenses, preparing for the inevitable retaliation. On the ground, ordinary citizens continued to play a vital role in the war effort. Factories operated around the clock, producing weapons, ammunition, and medical supplies. Volunteers helped care for the wounded and rebuild destroyed neighborhoods. In schools converted into shelters, children drew pictures of Earth's fighters standing tall against the alien invaders. Their art served as a reminder of why everyone was fighting: for hope, for freedom, and for the future. As the days passed, the resistance grew stronger. Pilots trained tirelessly, honing their skills in preparation for the next battle. Engineers worked to upgrade existing weapons, incorporating technology scavenged from downed alien ships. Scientists collaborated across borders, sharing discoveries that brought them closer to understanding the Empire's secrets. Jacob led the charge, using every resource at his disposal to stay one step ahead of the enemy. One breakthrough came when Jacob analyzed fragments of alien communication signals. He discovered patterns suggesting the Empire relied heavily on automated systems to manage its vast fleet. If those systems could be hacked or disrupted, it might create confusion and weaken their coordination. With the help of Commander Chen and her team, Jacob developed a plan to deploy a virus-like program into the Empire's network. It was risky. If detected, it could trigger a devastating countermeasure, but it was worth the gamble. Rachel oversaw the implementation of the plan, ensuring all teams were ready to act. She held meetings with military leaders, strategizing how best to protect key locations while launching the cyber attack. Her calm demeanor masked the anxiety bubbling beneath the surface. The stakes were higher than ever, and failure wasn't an option. When the time came, the operation unfolded with precision. A small team of hackers, led by Jacob, infiltrated the Empire's communications array aboard a captured scout ship. Working quickly, they uploaded the virus and retreated before the enemy realized what had happened. Within hours, reports began pouring in. Alien ships were misfiring, drifting off course, or colliding with each other. The disruption was temporary, but it gave humanity the edge they desperately needed. The Empire's response to the cyber attack was swift and merciless. Realizing their systems had been compromised, they launched a massive counteroffensive. Thousands of ships descended upon Earth once again, their weapons blazing with renewed fury. Cities that had just begun to rebuild were reduced to rubble, and the skies turned black with smoke and ash. The resistance fought back with everything they had, but the sheer scale of the attack threatened to overwhelm them. Jacob Hayes worked feverishly in his lab, trying to refine the virus program that had caused so much chaos among the alien fleet. He knew it wouldn't be enough on its own. The Empire was already adapting, patching the vulnerabilities the virus had exploited. But Jacob refused to give up. "There has to be another way," he muttered, staring at lines of code on his screen. His team gathered around him, offering suggestions and running simulations. Together, they came up with a risky plan. Instead of targeting individual ships, they would aim for the Empire's flagship, the heart of their command structure. Rachel Adams stood in the command center, coordinating the defense effort as reports poured in from every corner of the globe. She spoke directly to leaders on the front lines, urging them to hold their positions no matter what. Her voice remained steady, even as explosions echoed in the distance. "We've come too far to back down now," she said firmly. "If we can take out their flagship, we might break their momentum." The mission to infiltrate the flagship was led by Sergeant Liam Carter and a small team of elite operatives. Armed with EMP charges and experimental weapons, they boarded a stealth shuttle and launched into space under the cover of darkness. Their objective was clear: plant explosives deep within the ship and escape before detonation. It was a suicide mission, but every member of the team volunteered without hesitation. As the shuttle approached the flagship, tension filled the cramped cabin. The ship loomed ahead, its surface bristling with weapons and defenses. Liam gripped the controls tightly, guiding the shuttle through a maze of patrols and energy fields. "Stay sharp," he whispered over his shoulder. "One wrong move, and we're done." Inside the flagship, the team moved silently, avoiding patrols of armored guards. They planted the explosives in key locations, setting timers to ensure maximum damage. Just as they finished, alarms blared throughout the vessel. The team sprinted for the exit, dodging blasts and gunfire as they fought their way back to the shuttle. By the time they reached safety, the charges had already detonated, sending shockwaves through the massive ship. The explosion tore through the flagship, crippling its engines and disabling its weapons. As the ship drifted helplessly, the rest of the fleet faltered, thrown into disarray without central leadership. Captain Daniel Brooks seized the opportunity, leading a daring charge against the scattered alien forces. Pilots from both Earth and the Free Systems Alliance joined the assault, their ships weaving through the chaos like streaks of lightning. Explosions lit up the sky as missile after missile found its mark. On the ground, resistance fighters launched coordinated attacks, targeting weakened Imperial forces struggling to regroup. Civilians cheered as news of the flagship's destruction spread, their spirits lifted by the sight of alien ships retreating. For the first time in weeks, there was a sense of hope in the air. Rachel watched the battle unfold from mission control, her hands clenched into fists. She felt a surge of pride as she saw humanity rise to the occasion, fighting not just for survival, but for freedom. "This is our moment," she whispered to herself. "We've shown them who we are." But Rachel knew the war wasn't over yet. The Empire still had resources, and its leaders wouldn't give up easily. Still, the victory proved something important. Humanity could stand up to even the strongest adversary if they worked together. And as long as they kept fighting, There was always a chance to win. Back in his lab, Jacob stared at the monitor showing the damaged fleet pulling away from Earth. He allowed himself a small smile, knowing they had struck a major blow. But his mind was already racing ahead, thinking about the next step. The Empire might have been weakened, but it wasn't defeated, not yet. And until it was, there was no time to rest. The battle was over, but the scars it left behind would take years to heal. Cities lay in ruins, their streets deserted and buildings reduced to rubble. Smoke still hung heavy in the air, mingling with the scent of charred metal and ash. Yet amidst the devastation, there was a sense of quiet determination. Humanity had faced its darkest hour and emerged stronger than ever. Rachel Adams walked through what remained of New York City, her boots crunching against broken glass and debris. Around her, volunteers worked tirelessly to clear wreckage and care for survivors. She stopped to speak with a group of children playing near a makeshift shelter, their laughter cutting through the somber atmosphere like sunlight breaking through clouds. One boy looked up at her, his face smudged with dirt, and asked, "Are they gone for good?" Rachel knelt down, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We made them leave," she said softly, "and we'll make sure they never come back." In space, the remnants of the alien fleet retreated beyond Earth's orbit, regrouping under the shadow of distant moons. The Empire's leaders were furious, their arrogance shaken by humanity's unexpected resistance. But for now, they had no choice but to withdraw. Their flagship was destroyed, their forces scattered, and their reputation tarnished. For the first time in centuries, they had been forced to retreat, and the galaxy was watching. Jacob Hayes returned to his lab, exhausted but exhilarated. He stared at the monitors displaying images of the retreating ships, his mind racing with possibilities. Though the immediate threat had passed, he knew the Empire wouldn't stay away forever. They would rebuild, adapt, and return, stronger and more dangerous than before. But Jacob wasn't afraid. Instead, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Together with Commander Ava Chen and her team, he began developing new technologies to prepare for the next confrontation. "We got lucky this time," he said to Elena Morales, who stood beside him reviewing data. "Next time, we need to be ready." Rachel turned her focus to rebuilding Earth. She negotiated a fragile peace treaty with the Free Systems Alliance, ensuring mutual protection against any future imperial incursions. The alliance pledged to provide ongoing support, including advanced weaponry, medical aid, and engineers to help restore damaged infrastructure. In return, Earth agreed to share its discoveries about the Empire's weaknesses, strengthening the coalition's ability to resist further aggression. Across the planet, people came together to rebuild their lives. Factories reopened, producing materials needed to construct new homes and schools. Farmers planted crops in fields once scorched by alien attacks, determined to feed their communities. Artists painted murals on cracked walls, depicting scenes of unity and resilience. Even in the darkest corners of the world, hope began to take root. Late one evening, Rachel stood on a hill overlooking Washington, D.C., now illuminated by emergency lights and generators. The sky above was clear, dotted with stars that seemed brighter than usual. She thought about everything humanity had endured, the fear, the loss, the sacrifices, and how far they had come. Despite the pain, there was something beautiful about the way people had united, setting aside differences to fight for a common cause. As she gazed upward, Rachel whispered to herself, "We showed them we're not afraid, and we'll never bow to tyranny again." Her words carried a promise, not just to herself, but to everyone who had fought alongside her. Humanity might have been outmatched, but they had proven they weren't powerless. With courage, ingenuity, and unwavering determination, they had protected their home and secured a future worth fighting for. Back in his lab, Jacob continued working late into the night, driven by the belief that humanity's survival depended on staying one step ahead. He glanced at a photo pinned to the wall, a picture of Earth taken from space, its blue-green surface glowing with life. It reminded him why he kept going, even when the odds seemed impossible. Somewhere out there, the Empire was planning its next move. But so was he. For now, Earth was safe. The invaders had been driven back, their plans thwarted by the strength and resolve of ordinary people. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but humanity had already shown what it was capable of. They had faced the greatest challenge in their history, and won. And as long as they remembered that, nothing could stop them.